Welcome to this broadcast worship service from Whitehall Baptist Church. Our desire is to glorify God by proclaiming His Word, strengthening the family, and boldly sharing Jesus Christ to the whole world. Thanks for joining us today.
Just a few weeks ago, we had a special conference here dealing with the end of times, last days, looking forward to Jesus' return. But starting today, I want us to take us back to the very beginning. I want us to go back to the creation of it all. And the reason why I want to do this is because of my heart for our young people, whether they're a teenager or even younger. I know y'all are on fall break this past week, so probably y'all didn't bring me your school books home with you. But I went through Landry's books, and I pulled out two of his books that he enjoys reading because he's really into dinosaurs. Landry, he thinks they still exist, and we want to do a picture of him for his birthday card to send out to family. And it was a picture that Meredith got this great idea of him running through a field and then superimposing a dinosaur chasing after him. Well, and the picture turned out great. It's beautiful. But when I took Landry out into this field and said, Landry, I want you to run towards me and act like a dinosaur's chasing you. Oh, I shouldn't have said it. Because now in his 3-year-old mind, he's thinking there's a dinosaur coming out of those trees and he's going to come and eat me. And so he wasn't just running, he was screaming. He was crying. But he does love dinosaurs. T-Rex is his favorite. In fact, Chad Taylor used to call him T-Rex, just as a nickname. But as you open up these books, and here is a kid's book designed for a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, somewhere a preschool. It starts off by saying that the T-Rex lived 85 to 65 million years ago. Then when I open up this book, the really big, awesome book, Dinosaurs. As you open it up, the first page says they lived on the earth for over 160 million years, and they were big. Here they're teaching our young people, our preschool children, that dinosaurs lived millions and millions of years ago. Those of you in school right now, if you had brought your science book home with you, or maybe a world history book home with you, how old would it say the earth is? Millions, if not billions of years old, right? That's what your books say, right? And probably your teachers teach that. In fact, for anybody in here who's been in school since 1959, that's what you were taught. We're going to start today by looking at the false teaching of evolution. If you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to Colossians chapter 2, and we're going to read verse 8. And we're going to look at just this one verse. If you have your Bibles open to Colossians 2, verse 8, or it'll be on the screen, you can read along with us. It says in Colossians 2:8, beware, lest anyone cheat you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the basic principles of the world, and not according to Christ. Let no man cheat you through what's being taught in the world. It says through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the traditions of man and basic principles. Folks, what's in our school books, what's on the History Channel, what's on in National Geographic, would fall into this category right here of what are the philosophies of man, the traditions of man. And we're being cheated, we're being deceived through man's writings. Albert Einstein had a very great quote that I know he wasn't saying this in regards to Colossians 2:8. And Rick, if you'll scroll down, it'll pop up on the screen there, the verse Colossians 2:8. But Albert Einstein said, two things are infinite. Two things are infinite. The universe and human stupidity. And I'm not so sure about the universe. You catch that? He brilliantly described Colossians 2:8, that the traditions of man, the philosophies of man, the things that are taught to mankind is stupidity. And it all revolves around the teachings of the universe. Let's look at the word itself, universe. If you go to the next slide, Rick, it'll pop up and show us universe. And you go to the next one, let's split it and see what the word really means. Uni means single, and verse means spoken sentence. If we go all the way back to the beginning, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, we see exactly what universe is all about. The single spoken sentence. In Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said. God spoke. The universe is God speaking. God spoke it into existence. He didn't build the universe. He spoke it. Jesus himself, Lord God, spoke and the waves laid down. He speaks and the dead come to life. Every molecule in the universe obeys his voice except man. We're the only ones who disobey God. We're the only ones who go against God because we think we know better or we want to do things our way. But everything obeys the voice of God. And all that we have came into existence because God spoke it. Now, I made reference to the science books that are taught or used in our school systems. Science itself, the definition of science is systematized or systematic knowledge derived from observation, study, etc. So it is knowledge that comes from observation. Things that have to be observed. Things that you have to see with your own eyes. And yet so much of what is being taught as fact is really nothing more than fairy tale because it was not observed with human eyes. It was not studied. It was not seen. You know, there are 6 forms of the word evolution. 6 forms of the word evolution. The very first one is cosmic evolution, which means the origin of time, space, and matter, known as the Big Bang Theory. The next one is chemical evolution, the origin of higher elements from hydrogen. The third is stellar and planetary evolution, which means the origin of stars and planets. The fourth form of evolution is organic evolution, which is the origin of life. And then the fifth form of evolution is macroevolution, changing from one kind into another. In other words, a frog can turn to a monkey, which can turn to a human. That would be macroevolution. And these first 5 that we looked at right here are what are typically referred to with the idea of evolution, what evolution means. But yet not a single one of these definitions has ever been observed. No one has ever seen one of these take place. The sixth one, yes, it is microevolution, which is variations within kinds, meaning that you can take a donkey and a horse and breed a what? A mule. We've seen that happen. You can take one breed of a dog and another breed of a dog and bring them together, and then you have another breed. One of my favorite dogs right now that I've ever seen, I think it's so beautiful, is a silver lab. Anybody ever seen a silver lab? A few of you? They're beautiful. They're almost as beautiful as a Weimaraner. They're so beautiful. They get the silver color, and they often have the blue eyes. But the AKA doesn't even recognize it as an official breed because it's a new breed. It's only been around for a few decades. And so they don't even recognize it. But it came from specialized breeding. Now, they didn't breed a cat and a rabbit and come up with something totally different. No, they bred 2 dogs to come up with a dog. This is what's called microevolution. We can believe in microevolution, but when we use the word evolution, that's not what was being referred to. Now, they'll use it as their example. Oh, we know that evolution happens because we've seen dogs breed other types of dogs. And we've seen a transformation. So they've definitely evolved. But that's just one type. And you can't say that these other 5 are true because of the one that's true. Many people think that Charles Darwin invented evolution. He did not. He only popularized it. But the theory of evolution can date several centuries before the birth of Christ. Thales of Miletus, who was born 640 years before Christ and died 546 years before Christ. And I want to stress the emphasis that it was BC, before Christ, not BCE, which is what your school books now use, because they're trying to take Christ out of our schools. Jesus is not allowed in schools, and so now they've changed the meaning of BC from before Christ to BCE, before the Common Era. Wrong. We're not going to take Christ out of this. Even Christian scholars, there were even Christian scholars who believed in evolution. Augustine of Hippo, who lived A.D. 354 to 430, as a Christian, he believed in what was known as theistic evolution, and we'll probably have to touch on that next Sunday, and look at the dangers of theistic evolution. And yet there are some of the most famous Christians we know of believe in theistic creation or theistic evolution, like Billy Graham and James Dobson and some of these great men of faith who believe in what I say is dangerous to Christians. And so we will study that next Sunday. But Augustine of Hippo was a Christian who believed in evolution. But when Darwin emerged on the scene, he changed science forever. And his writings changed everything. You know, in the 1950s, some of you were still in school in the 1950s. There were only 2,000 to 3,000 words in all the textbooks on evolution, or just mention the word evolution. What about today? There's about 33,000 words on evolution in our textbooks. In 1959, President Eisenhower asked Congress to spend $1 billion to promote evolution in our textbooks. Why? Because the Russians beat us to space. The Russians made it to space before we did. They were teaching evolution in their schools, so we believed, as Congress, our nation believed that we need to catch up. And so in 1959, evolution began being taught in our school system. What happened in 1963? Madalyn Murray O'Hara took prayer out of schools. These two things had tremendous ramifications and have changed the culture that we live in. Since 1963, we already mentioned there were 33,000 words about evolution in our textbooks. Premarital sex has risen for every single age bracket. Unwed birth rates from girls aged 10 to 14 are up 100%. 553% increase in pregnancies. But yet we don't see this because there are 58 million abortions that have occurred since Roe v. Wade. Couples living together has increased 725%. Child abuse is up 2,300%. Illegal drug use is up 6,000%. Violent crime offenses are up 995%. SAT scores averaged 980 in 1963. And if we were able to base things on the same testing then, today, the average would be under 900. But twice they have dumbed down the test so that the things look the same, if not better, than prior to 1963. And teen suicide rate has almost tripled. Now, teenagers, this isn't your fault. Really, this isn't even my fault. I'm too young for this too. But we as adults have failed you and our young children who are coming up. You are being led astray, and these statistics that now affect you are not your fault. But I want to make it my priority to help you and every adult here, everybody to hear what the truth is so you can stand upon the truth of the Word of God and not the vain teachings and the philosophies and traditions of man, as we see in Colossians. The difference between a fairy tale and what evolution is the very simple phrase, millions and billions of years. A fairy tale says that if you kiss a frog, what will happen to that frog? Poof! A prince will appear. Right? Instantly. Right there. The smoke and the harps and all that goes on with a great movie and a fairy tale, the frog turns into a prince. That's a fairy tale. But what's the difference? Evolution says the exact same thing, but instead of poof, it happening right in an instant, it now is taking place over billions of years. It's the same story, just the phrase billions of years ago. The Big Bang teaches that we came from a tiny dot that contained all the matter of the universe, and yet that dot came from nothing. In other words, there's nothing, absolutely nothing in space, nothing. No oxygen, no dirt, no dust, nothing. Yet somehow, out of this nothingness, all the dirt collected into a dot. Okay, so there was nothing there, but yet whatever was there in this nothingness collected together formed a dot of dirt, and began to spin and spin and spin and spin and get faster and faster and faster until finally it explodes. And as it explodes, then everything is formed. And so basically, 20 billion years ago, the Big Bang teaches where nothing existed, it all came together, explodes, and now we have what we have today. And then, 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth cooled to form a rocky crust. Okay, so it started out 20 billion years ago where there was nothing. And out of this nothingness, everything comes together, explodes, and then 15.4 billion years later, the Earth finally decides to cool down into a rocky crust. There's still nothing there, it's just rock. There is no oxygen, there's nothing else there. But in the same breath they say that, all this rocky crust absorbed the oxygen. Well, wait a minute. I'm confused here. There was nothing in the universe, but yet all the dirt came together. Then it explodes, and 16 billion years later, it cools, and there was no oxygen, but the rocks absorbed the oxygen. How can this make sense? But this is what's taught as fact. The rocks absorbed the oxygen, and then over 3 billion years, they began to evolve. They began to change. Now, I want to put, if I hadn't already put holes in this theory as it was, I want to continue with this and show that there's so many holes in this theory, and yet it's still being taught as fact. Have any of our teenagers, have you studied the law of conservation of angular momentum? Have y'all heard that yet in your science books? All right, well, let me kind of explain what the law of conservation of angular momentum means. Let's say we all decide to go get in the church van, and we're all piled in the van. We roll down the windows, we open up all the doors, and we take that church van, and we're doing donuts out in the parking lot. Chris Barber's out there, he's just spinning those tires. We are laying down some rubber in the parking lot, and we are spinning. Well, because the doors are open, the windows are down, we start to go a little too fast, and we start to lose our grip, and people start flying outside of the bus. All right? Now, what this law says is that as you are flying out of the church van doing donuts in the parking lot, you will fly in the same direction that you're spinning. Okay? So the bus is running counterclockwise, you're going to fly off counterclockwise. You're going to roll and get some burns, but you're going to go in the same direction that the bus was spinning. That's what this law says. So why is it that 3 of our planets in our solar system spin in the opposite direction of the rest? And 91 known moons in our solar system 8 of those spin in the backwards rotation. Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune all have moons that orbit in both directions. So if the Big Bang Theory were true, then these things wouldn't be going in opposite directions. They would all be going in the same direction, just like if we took the church bus and we were doing donuts in the parking lot. If the Big Bang Theory were true, then matter would be evenly distributed. But it's not. When you look out into the sky at night and you're looking at the stars, don't you see clusters here and gaps there? Because there are voids. And then the second law of thermodynamics says that everything tends towards disorder, rot, rust, and decay. And we can all be a testament to that. Just driving home yesterday from Orange Beach, Alabama, driving up Highway 45 from the Gulf Coast, I saw some what were probably beautiful buildings at one time, but through time they have rotted, rusted, and decayed, and are merely rumble now. I mean, they're basically falling apart. So we know this is true, but yet evolutionists, scientists, historians will say, oh, well, the adding of energy will change all that. That overcomes the second law of thermodynamics. They'll say the sun did that. The sun changed everything. Well, I don't know about you. I have put a roof on a house before. Some of y'all have shingled a roof before, haven't you? What does the sun do to shingles? Does it make the shingles better? No. It begins to destroy those shingles. The sun does not add life to shingles. It destroys shingles. The greatest case in point was adding energy to a bomb. And what happened in World War II when the Japanese were bombed by America? Those atomic bombs, adding energy, did it make life better for them in Japan? No. It destroyed things for decades. So adding energy is not the solution to what the scientists are saying. Also, the theory of evolution and what Charles Darwin said about the survival of the fittest. It believes that one being would not help another being to survive. But yet we see in nature that that's not true. Birds like robins and thrushes whistle to warn other birds of hawks. Honeybees will suicide attack to protect the hive. The tick bird warns the rhinoceros of approaching enemies. And there are some shrimp, which I love to eat shrimp, by the way, that can clean other fish in the ocean. So we see here that everything about nature, everything that we can observe, that we can study, goes against the theory of evolution, which has not been observed. I know we put scientists up on a pedestal. I know we believe that they're infallible, they can make no mistakes. However, there was a time when scientists used to believe that the planets all revolved around the earth and not the sun. There was a time when scientists taught that a big rock would fall faster than a small rock, and we know that not to be true. There was a time when scientists thought that if you were sick, then your blood was bad and needed to be bled, and that's how George Washington died. Scientists are men and women who can make mistakes, and they do. One other fact that we can study is a population growth chart. A population growth chart shows us that in the year 1800, there were 1 billion people on the planet. And all the way back at the time of Christ, there were 250 million people on the planet. And growth studies say that our population started about 4,400 years ago. 4,400 years ago. That would put us right at the time of the flood. The flood that God brought, that Noah and his family survived, that was the beginning of the population. So we see here that God, He was in charge of all of this. If evolution were true, if this planet was 4.6 billion years, then there would be nearly 150,000 people per square inch. How about them close quarters? All right. There are over 77 trillion stars that can be accounted for, that have been observed, that have been named. But yet we have never witnessed a single one of them being created, being born, being started. Not a single time have we ever seen one from scratch. Now, we've seen them explode. We've seen them explode, which is considered a nova or a supernova, but we've never, ever seen one form. We have seen fossilized trees. What's a fossilized tree? That's when a tree has fallen over and it's been buried and basically turns into rock. Well, if a tree was to fall over and lay down, turn into a rock, it would be in one form of sediment, and then other sediment would pile on top, and you have other layers. However, there have been plenty of trees, not just one, multiple trees have been fossilized, standing upright and penetrating through multiple layers, which represent millions of years ago in our history books. That goes against what's being taught in our schools. That's not possible compared to what they're teaching. Today, a couple hundred years after Charles Darwin popularized the theory of evolution, it's just as puzzling today as it was then. Why is that? One, because it's far from being solved. And two, because it's wrong. There's no truth to it. Nothing has been observed to support the theory, only speculation. So why? Why is it that evolution is taught as fact in our schools? And not just in our schools. All of us who spend time watching TV or reading books, you're going to be indoctrinated with these same teachings. So why is it that evolution is taught as fact? Well, it's because most, and most may be strong of a word, but most educated people believe it. And therefore, if education believes it, it must be truth, right? Not only that, but the only alternative to evolution is a literal 6-day creation. Well, that's religion. And science can't have anything to do with religion. Well, I hate to tell a scientist this because I'd probably get into an argument or maybe in a fight. But what they believe is religion. There is no fact to support it, but yet they believe it so strongly, so dogmatically, it's religion. It's the same thing as religion. And so what's being taught and considered fact is basically the same as religion. And I know you've already heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. I'll say it until the cows come home. I am not here to teach religion. I'm here to teach about a relationship. I want you to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. There are plenty of religions in this world, and that's not what I want you to have. I want you to have a religion. I want you to have a relationship. But those who teach evolution are so sincere, so dogmatic, that evolution is the only possible solution to our existence. And therefore, because of that propaganda, because of that devotion, that commitment that they have, it's now being taught as fact. I already mentioned there are things about scientists that we could discredit them. I don't even have to do that because William Broad and Nicholas Wade wrote a book which they titled Betrayers of the Truth, who did a lot better job than I could ever do. But in their book, they documented where scientists have fraudulently documented their research in laboratories. Folks, we don't have to believe everything that's in our textbooks. We don't have to believe everything that's in a children's book. We don't have to believe everything that's out there. There is one place that we need to go to. That's the Word of God. Dr. David Skinner says, if evolution is true, then religion is one of its children. And this has far-reaching consequences. First, the concept of God only arose in the mind of man. And one God arising in the mind of man is as good as any other. Second, one religion is as good as any other. Third, salvation is only an emotional experience, not a transformation of one's life. Fourth, there are no moral absolutes. One is free to do whatever feels good. Fifth, Scripture is only tribal literature, produced in different eras by well-meaning scribes. Therefore, its precepts are not binding upon man. if we allow evolution, we allow God to be taken out of our schools, then what Dr. David Skinner says there will come to pass, and a lot of it already is. A lot of that's already in the world that we live in today. A world of no moral absolutes. A world where you can do whatever feels good or do what you want to do. And religion is man-made. And this book was written by people thousands of years ago, and it doesn't mean anything to us today, and we can change the meaning of the words. And that's being done today. It's important that we take a stand. It's important that we teach our children the truth based upon the Word of God. Next Sunday, I want to do a follow-up. Theistic evolution. Because, like I said earlier, this has been taught for decades now. Probably just about everybody in this room has been taught this in some form or another. There are probably some in here who today are disagreeing with me and saying, you're going against everything I've been taught my whole life. So, and yet you still say, I believe in Jesus Christ, He's the Lord of my life. Well, that is theistic evolution. Next Sunday, I'm going to disprove that as well. I want you to be here for that. But in the meantime, it is time that we take a stand. It's a time that we say, enough's enough. God's Word said it, that settles it. I need to hold and cling to God's Word, not to the words of man. Because Colossians 2:8 told us that the teachings of man were going to lead us astray. But God's Word will never lead us astray. Let's hold to what He says. Cling to what He says. God said it. Whether you believe it or not, it's already been settled.